Good morning, one and all. Uh, on behalf of Department of Ophthalmology, Sri Lakshmi Narayana Institute of Medical Sciences, I welcome you all to the online class. Today we will be talking about the anatomy of the cornea. Good morning, one and all. Today we will be talking about the anatomy of the cornea. Okay. I'm Dr. Wasim, a senior resident, Department of Ophthalmology, Sri Lakshmi Narayana Institute of Medical Sciences. Okay. Let's go to the class. Okay, so basically coming to the layers of the eye has three layers, namely the outer fibrous coat, which consists of the cornea and the sclera, the middle vascular layer, which consists of the uvea. The uvea in turn is made up of three parts: the iris, the ciliary body, and the choroid. The vascular supply, the middle layer, provides nutrition to both the outer fibrous layer and the inner sensory layer or the sensitive layer of the retina. Okay. Now coming to the cornea proper, let us understand the anatomy of the cornea. Cornea in Greek is called kerato. All the words come from the same root word kerato, like keratoplasty, keratoconus. This kerato word is derived from Greek. It means a horn or a shield like. The ancient Greeks thought that the cornea behaves like a shield for the eye. So they considered it to be a tough layer, or probably something which protects the eye. Okay. So coming to the cornea proper, the cornea is a transparent tissue which covers the anterior one sixth of the outer fibrous coat of the eye. It has a watch glass like appearance. That is, it is transparent. It just bulges little bit. It protrudes little bit above the sclera. When you consider the globe, the sclera proper, the cornea is somewhat protruding out. Why? Because of different curvatures of both the sclera and the cornea. The sclera has somewhat a larger radius of curvature, while the cornea has a smaller radius of curvature. Okay. Coming into the anatomy proper, the cornea appears slightly elliptical. It is elliptical horizontally, with the horizontal diameter measuring 11 to 12 millimeters horizontally, and the vertical diameter measuring 10 to 11 millimeters vertically. There is a transition zone, that is a zone between the cornea and the sclera. This zone is called the limbus. The limbus is the zone which is rich in stem cells and which helps in regeneration of the cornea, which helps in turnover of the corneal epithelial cells and the cornea proper. Okay, coming to the basic features of cornea. The cornea, as I said, is elliptical anteriorly with the horizontal diameter being 11 to 12 millimeters, while the vertical diameter being 10 to 11 millimeters. You can imagine the cornea to be like a rugby ball which is slightly elliptical. While the anterior surface of the cornea is elliptical, the posterior surface of the cornea is not elliptical, it is somewhat circular. Okay, to begin with, the anterior surface of the cornea also was elliptical, but what happens is due to the pressure of the lid or due to the lid drooping on the cornea, the anterior part of the cornea has been molded to become more elliptical. So that is why the anterior part of the cornea looks somewhat elliptical rather than the posterior part of the cornea. Okay, so now coming to the refractive power of the cornea. The cornea has a refractive power of 43 diopters, which is like almost 3/4 of the total refractive power. The remaining 1/4 is only contributed by the lens. Okay. So the cornea is a major refractive. The air corneal interface or the air tear film corneal interface is the major refractive surface of the eye. Okay, coming to the refractive index of the cornea. Cornea being transparent has a refractive index of 1.37. Considering air to have a refractive index of 1, the cornea comparatively has a refractive index of 1.37. Okay, the curvature, how curved is the cornea? The cornea has a radius of curvature of 7.8 millimeters. Okay, So the cornea is somewhat thin at the center, and it goes going to the periphery, it somewhat thickens. So the central thickness of the cornea is 520 microns approximately, while at the periphery it somewhat increases to 670 or even up to 700 microns. Okay. Now coming to the layers of the cornea proper. The cornea has a anterior epithelial layer, a Bowman's membrane, a central stromal layer, okay, and a inconspicuous duas or the predecimens layer and the decimens layer, followed by a single layer of endothelial cells. Leaving alone the duas layer, we can say that there are 5 layers of the cornea. The anterior epithelial layer, the Bowman's membrane, the stromal layer, the Descemet's membrane, and the endothelial layer. Okay. So coming to the thickness of each layer individually, the epithelial layer or the topmost layer of the cornea has a thickness of around 50 microns. Okay, and it is made up of stratified, squamous, non-keratinized epithelium, while the Bowman's membrane has a thickness of 8 to 14 microns, and it has a the Bowman's membrane is considered like a more compacted anterior stroma or a more compacted, unorganized collagen fibers. The stroma is the most thickest or occupies the major part of the cornea. It is about 500 microns. In the stroma, the stroma is the major contributor for the transparency of the cornea. It has an orderly arrangement of collagen fibers, collagen lamellae, along with keratocytes or the corneal cells interspersed between these lamella. Okay, so coming to the next layer, the Descemet's membrane. Okay, the Duas layer is an inconspicuous layer. There are considerations that it may be or may not be present. Okay, so coming to the Descemet's membrane has a thickness of 10 to 12 microns, and it forms the basement membrane of the endothelial cells. Okay, and the endothelial cell, a single layer of endothelial cell, having a thickness of 5 microns. It is made up of simple squamous epithelial cells. Okay. Okay. So highlighting on the various points that the Bowman's layer, while is not the basement membrane of the epithelial layer, because the epithelial layer have their own basement membrane, while the endothelial layer, the Descemet's membrane, forms the basement membrane of the endothelium. Okay. Next, going into detail about each and every layer, the epithelial layer. As I told you, the epithelial layer is made up of stratified. Stratified means they are arranged in layers. Strata means layer, and they are made up of squamous. Squamous are more flattened cells and non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, unlike the skin which has a keratinized epithelium, the corneal epithelial cells are non-keratinized, and epithelial layer contributes to 10% of the total corneal thickness. 10% of total corneal thickness. They contribute to about 50 to 9. They have a thickness of about 50 to 90 microns, and they are like 5 to 6 cell layer, 6 cell layered. There are 5 to 6 layers of nucleated cells. Okay, the most superficial are the flattened superficial cells. They are more flatter. They are the superficial 2 or 3 layers, and next comes the wing cells. The wing cells form another 2 to 3 layers. Okay, followed by the lower basal cell layer, which rests on a basement membrane. Okay, so the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium forms the topmost superficial layer, followed by the wing cells and the basal cells. The basal cells are more rounded, while they travel up, they become more flattened until they become the superficial cell layer. Okay, so coming to the point again, it is stratified, it is squamous, and it is non-keratinized. Okay, coming to the epithelial layer in detail, the surface corneal epithelial cells has numerous microvilli. Okay, I will show you. This, you can see there is numerous microvilli and microplicae. Okay. These microvilli and microplicae and these cells generate glycocalyx. They secrete glycocalyx, which helps in the adhesion and stability of the tear film. That is, they hold the tear film onto the cornea with the help of these microvilli or microprojections. The basal cells are the cells which are only capable of mitosis. That is, these cells, basal cells, divide continuously, and they keep pushing the cells upwards. While they keep pushing the cells upwards, they become more flattened. The wing cells are more flatter than the basal cells, but they are less flatter compared to the superficial cells. Okay, fine. So the basal cells are capable of mitosis. The newly formed cells are pushed anteriorly. They change their shape, thereby transforming into wing cells. The cells continue to move anteriorly. Finally, they become superficial cells. What happens to the superficial cells? Once the superficial cells, after a couple of periods, they disintegrate. That is, they lose their attachment. The desmosomes are broken and they are shed into the tear films. The desmosomes are the interlinks between the cells, while the hemidesmosomes are the anchoring of the cells to the extracellular matrix. So the interlinking of the cells is lost when the superficial cells mature and they are shed into the tear films. Like how we shed cells from our skin, these are also shed into the tear films and they are washed away. Okay. The epithelial stem cells are undifferentiated pluripotent cells. These cells are located at the basal cells. There is an XYZ hypothesis which says that from the limbus, the basal cells are generated and they are constantly pushed in a centripetal fashion towards the center of the cornea. From there, the basal cells constantly divide. That is, the X is the movement towards the center. Y is the movement upwards. Z is the movement from both laterally towards the center and laterally. This XYZ hypothesis says that the cells are constantly pushed in, and these basal cells, they're constantly dividing. They become the wing cells and the superficial cells. Finally, they get lost. The epithelial cells are the undifferentiated pluripotent cells which serve as a source of new corneal epithelium. They are found in the limbal basal epithelium, especially in the palisades of walks. The palisades of walks are mostly found in the superior and the inferior part of the cornea. Okay. The basal cells are attached to the basement membrane, okay, with the help of hemidesmosome. As I told you, desmosomes holds the cells together, while hemidesmosome hold the cell, they anchor the cell to the basement membrane. Okay. The basal lamina is an extracellular secretory product of the basal epithelium. The main function of the basal lamina is to attach the corneal epithelium to the stroma. So, if the basal lamina is destroyed, or if the epithelium is destroyed, it takes 6 weeks for the basal lamina to regenerate. But they have the capacity of regenerating. That is, new epithelial cells can be laid once the epithelium is abraded or epithelium is lost. Now coming to the second layer of the cornea, that is the Bowman's membrane. It is named after English scientist and ophthalmologist Dr. William Brown. Okay. It is an acellular, tough membrane-like zone, and it is situated between the corneal epithelium and the stroma. It is between the epithelium and stroma. It is 8 to 14 microns in thick and is composed of randomly arranged collagens. These collagens, unlike the stroma, they are randomly arranged. That is, they are finer than those in the corneal stroma. That is, they are more thinner and they are randomly arranged. But what happens is you can't differentiate between the Bowman's membrane proper and the stroma because they merge into the stroma. And as I told you, the Bowman's membrane is not a basement membrane of the epithelial cells, unlike the Decimet's membrane, which is a basement membrane of the endothelial cells. The epithelial cells have their own basement membrane, below which there is the Bowman's membrane. Okay, so there is a controversy that the Bowman's membrane is considered as a modified or like a compacted anterior stroma because of their arrangement of collagen fibers. Okay. So the Bowman's membrane is resistant to trauma. Okay, it cannot be destroyed by trauma, but once it gets destroyed by surgeries or by traumas or by ulcers, it cannot be regenerated. Unlike the epithelial cells, even after destruction, the basal lamina has the capacity to regenerate these epithelial cells within 6 weeks. But once the Bowman's membrane is destroyed, these cells, Bowman's membrane do not regenerate, and what we get is a scar, the corneal scar. The scarring of cornea results. Okay. Coming to the third layer, the stroma proper, or the stroma, the substantia propria. The stroma occupies the major part of the cornea, That is, it is about 500 microns in thickness. Okay, that is 90% of the total corneal thickness is contributed by the stroma. Okay. It is composed of collagen fibers, keratocytes, and an extracellular ground substance. Okay. The collagen constitutes 70% of the dry weight of the stroma. The collagen fibers in the stroma, if you see here, they have a uniform diameter of 25 to 35 nanometers, and they are arranged in flat bundles. Like they are arranged like arrangement of maybe say a pipes or like a tubes. Okay, these flat bundles are stacked one over the another. This stacking is called lamellae. These lamellae, they extend from limbus to limbus. They are not interrupted between. So when a lamellae starts from a limbus, it goes and ends in the other limbus, and they are oriented at various angles to each other. Okay, these collagen fibers form approximately 300 lamellae. That is, the stroma has almost 300 lamellae in the corneal stroma. Okay, it is the arrangement of these collagen fibers that contributes to the transparency of the cornea. Okay, the collagen fibers are highly uniform in diameter. That is, their the diameter ranging from 25 to 35 nanometers gives this transparency. They are uniform. There is no like some collagens are longer, some collagens are shorter, some collagens are stouter, some collagens are thinner. They have a uniform thickness, diameter, and the distance between the two collagen fibers is also highly uniform, about 41.5 nanometers. You can see here, this is the arrangement of the collagen fibers in the cornea comparing to the arrangement of collagen fibers in the sclera. Can you see in the sclera, the collagen fibers are randomly distributed. That is, the intercollagen distance is not the same. While in case of cornea, the intercollagen distance is highly uniform. They are stacked in a proper lamellae. Okay, so the corneal transparency depends on the arrangement of these collagen fibers in the stroma. The mean diameter of individual collagen fibers and the mean distance between the collagen fibers are same, and both, not only that, they are not only same, both of them are less than half the wavelength of visible light. That is why you get the transparency. That is, they don't reflect the visible light, rather they refract the visible light and allow it to pass into the eye. That is, a normal wavelength of visible light is 400 to 700 nanometers. The arrangement, the thickness, and the arrangement in the intercollagen distance is about half the wavelength. That is about say 200 to 350 nanometers. Okay, so as a result of scattering of the incident ray of light by the collagen, it is cancelled by destructive interference. That is why you don't get any smudging or any halos or rings around the object we see because of the destructive interference. Okay, now these collagen fibers are laid in an extracellular ground matrix. These extracellular ground matrix are mostly composed of glycosaminoglycans. The glycosaminoglycans of stroma are mostly keratin sulfate, which forms 60% or 65 to 70% of the total glycosaminoglycans content. And also, apart from this, we have chondroitin sulfate. Okay. Coming to the collagen and the keratocytes, coming to the collagen and the keratin and the ground substance. Now, the third component of the stroma is the keratocytes or the corneal fibroblasts. These are the major cell types of stroma, and they occupy 3 to 5% of the stromal volume. They are spindle in shape, like they are long. If you see here, they are spindle in shape in cross section. They are scattered in between the lamellae. They are not within the lamellae. They are in between the lamellae. They synthesize collagen and extracellular components, and thus they maintain the stromal transparency. So these keratocytes are responsible for synthesis of both the collagen and the extracellular matrix. Okay. Now coming to the fourth layer, that is the Descemet's layer. I told you before the Descemet's layer, there is a pre-Descemet's layer or the Duas layer. This Duas layer is inconspicuous. It was recently discovered by Dr. Harminder Dua in 2013. Okay, it is a thin layer of collagen which is between the stroma and Descemet's membrane. By various studies, it has been proved that there is a thin layer, a tough layer, which is an air-resistant layer, which is between the stroma and the Descemet's membrane. This layer is considered to be the Duas layer, making the number of corneal layers to be 6 in numbers. Okay. Excluding the Duas layer, we have 5 layers of cornea. Okay. Now coming to the Descemet membrane proper. This Descemet's membrane, as I told you, unlike the Bowman's membrane, it is a thick basement membrane which is secreted by the endothelium. Okay. So Descemet's membrane acts as a basement membrane of the endothelium. It is constantly produces. So from birth till adult life, it thickens, it keeps thickening. Okay. So like at birth, if you consider the Descemet's membrane to be about 3 microns at birth, at adult life, it becomes almost 10 microns. That is, it is constantly getting deposited layer by layer over by the endothelial cells. Okay, but though there are no elastic fibers which are present in the Descemet's membrane, they do have elastic properties because of the particular arrangement of collagen fibers. Okay, the Descemet's membrane terminates near the limbus as a Schwalbe-based line. Okay, so what happens in case of Descemet's membrane detachment or Descemet's membrane tear? When the Descemet's membrane is torn by trauma or anything, this membrane curls towards the stroma. That is, it curls inwards because of the elastic property of the Descemet's membrane. Okay, as I told you, unlike the attachment of Bowman's membrane and the corneal stroma, the attachment of Descemet's membrane is comparatively weaker. Okay, this property allows us to do something called the endothelial keratoplasty and other corneal transplants using the Descemet's membrane and the endothelium. Okay. So the Descemet's membrane has a weak attachment to the corneal surface, and there is a sharp definition that, like, unlike the Bowman's membrane, as I told you, the Bowman's membrane just merges into the anterior stroma. You can clearly define the boundary of the Descemet's membrane and the stroma and the posterior stroma. Okay. The Descemet's membrane is a tough layer and it's resistant to enzymatic degradation by phagocytosis and toxins. So what happens in case of a corneal ulcer? It's because of its toughness, the Descemet's membrane is the entire cornea gets eaten away by the corneal ulcer, by the bacterial pathogens and the toxins. While the Descemet's membrane being tough, it remains intact. And what happens is, because the entire cornea is lost and it's only the Descemet's membrane and endothelial cells which is remaining, they often herniate out as a result of the increased intraocular pressure. This herniation of the Descemet's membrane through a small hole in the cornea, it's called a descemetocele. Okay. So as I told you, unlike the Bowman's membrane, the Descemet's membrane definitely has a regenerative capacity. Now coming to the last layer of the cornea, that is the corneal endothelial cell layer. Okay. As I told you, it is a single layer which constantly produces and deposits the endothelial cells. Okay. So the corneal endothelium is a simple squamous epithelium. It's a squamous epithelium. The shape of the individual cells is hexagonal. Can you see? This is by a specular microscopy. This is by a special technique. A special microscope is used to take an image of the endothelial cells. The shape of individual cells is hexagonal, which forms a continuous mosaic pattern. This pattern. Okay, it's like a mosaic pattern. Okay. The endothelial cells are interconnected with each other by various junctional complexes like the zonula occludens, macula occludens, and macula adherens. These cells possess ion transport system that is called the endothelial pump. This endothelial pump and other stuff we will be discussing when we discuss physiology of the cornea. Okay. So they possess endothelial pump. These endothelial pumps, they regulate the water content of the corneal stroma. The corneal transparency is also dependent on how much of water the cornea possesses. So what happens is the aqueous water seeps into the cornea, while this water which has seeped into the cornea is pulled back or it is returned back into the aqueous by these endothelial pumps. So this endothelial pump, it's a sodium potassium ATPase pump, and these pumps constantly push out water, thereby keeping the cornea in a turgid or in a semi dehydrated state, thereby which helps facilitate it to have a transparency. Okay, then the endothelial cells, unlike the epithelial cells, which are stratified, the basal layer cells constantly. Sorry for the slight technical glitch. Okay, so coming back to the endothelial cells. So the endothelial cells, as I told you, they cannot divide, or unlike the epithelial cells, they cannot divide or replicate. And with aging, like at birth, we have around 3,000 to 4,000 cells per millimeter square of endothelial cells. And in the adult life, we lose about there's a constant shedding of these endothelial cells. And in adult life, we have around 2,500 cells. With the aging, it becomes around 2,000 cells. So they don't divide, they don't replicate, unlike the epithelial cells. So what happens is they decreases okay. So what happens is when an endothelial cells is lost, the neighboring endothelial cells, they increase their size and they change their shape to occupy the area. This increase in cell size is called polymegatism, and the change in shape is called pleomorphism. Okay, so as the endothelial cells keep the cornea in a dehydrated state, or they maintain the corneal hydration, which is responsible for the transparency of the cornea. So what happens when the endothelial cell count falls below 800 cells per millimeter square? That is when the cornea cannot be compensated, and there is a corneal decompensation. That is, the cornea becomes cloudy. Okay, so during trauma, or during any surgical procedures like a complicated cataract surgery or other invasive procedures, when there is a damage to the endothelial cells, the endothelial cells cannot regenerate, and what happens is the corneal transparency is lost, thereby the cornea gets decompensated. Okay, now coming to the blood supply of the cornea. As I told you, the cornea is an avascular structure. It is devoid of any blood vessels. Okay, so it derives its nutrition from the aqueous humor and the perilimbal vessels. These perilimbal vessels, which is located around the limbus, they enter about 1 millimeter into the cornea to provide nutrition to the cornea. Okay, generally the cornea does not contain, in a normal state, it does not contain any blood vessels. Whenever a blood vessel is present in the cornea, it is pathological. Okay, why is the blood vessels absent? The absence of blood vessels is also a contributing factor for the transparency of the cornea. Okay, so considering the blood supply of the cornea, it's the anterior ciliary artery, which is a branch of the ophthalmic artery. It forms a vascular arcade in the limbal region. Can you see here? Can you see here? This is a vascular limbal arcade around the cornea. This forms a vascular limbal arcade, which helps in corneal metabolism and provide for repair and nourishment. Okay, so whenever there is a deficiency in oxygen, or when there is when the cornea is infected, or when the regulatory mechanism of the cornea is lost. Okay, so what happens is, or when the limbal stem cells are lost, especially in case of acid or alkali injury, these vessels enter into the cornea. They enter into the cornea to provide nutrition to the cornea. This is called corneal neovascularization. Neo means new. That is, new vessels grows into the cornea. Okay, so what happens is these new vessels try to provide nutrition to the cornea when because of production of vascular endothelial growth factors, which make these new vessels grow into the cornea. Okay, once after the normal environment is restored, these vessels, okay, are lost. They become, the blood supply within the vessels is lost, and they become what is called as ghost vessels. Ghost vessels are, the vessel will be present, but it will not carry any blood within the vessels. Okay, that is a small loops which are derived from the anterior ciliary vessels. They invade the periphery of the cornea. For about 1 millimeter, they enter into the cornea and they provide nutrition. Okay, rest of the nutrition is from the aqueous and partly aqueous and from the perilimbal vessels, and partly from the tear film. Especially the oxygen is from the tear film. Okay, so the corneal neovascularization, as I told you, is sprouting of new vessels from the perilimbal capillaries in response to oxygen deprivation. Okay. Now, coming to the nerve supply of the cornea. Okay, the cornea is an avascular structure, but it is rich in nerve supply. It is highly sensitive. Okay, the nerve supply of the cornea arises from the nasociliary nerve. The nasociliary nerve gives a branch, the long ciliary nerve, which enters the eyeball around the optic nerve. It runs anteriorly in the suprachoroidal space. For a short distance from the limbus, they pierce the sclera. They divide and connect with each other and the conjunctival nerves. So this around the limbus, these nerves divide, they connect, they divide, and they form a plexus. That plexus is called the pericorneal nerve plexus. It is up to this pericorneal nerve plexus that the myelination is present. That is 60 to 80 myelinated trunks from the pericorneal plexus. They enter into the cornea. That is after going for 1 to 2 mm. Can you see this diagram? This is from the trigeminal ganglion, the nasociliary nerve, the long and short posterior ciliary nerves. Okay, they enter and they divide and they form the pericorneal plexus. After going into the cornea, that is after losing the myelin sheath, 1 to 2 mm into the stroma, the corneal nerves lose their myelin sheath. Okay, but for their Schwann cell covering remains. Okay, they divide dichotomously and they form 3 networks. First network is the stromal plexus, that is in the stroma, in the mid stroma, you have a mid stromal plexus. Then from the stroma, they pass anteriorly, they pass above, okay, they pass above, and they form the second plexus called the subepithelial plexus, that is under the epithelial layer. This is located in between the Bowman's membrane and the anterior stroma. Okay, from the Bowman's membrane, the nerve passes through the Bowman's membrane. The Schwann cell covering is lost. That is, even the first the myelin is lost before they enter into the cornea. Now, even the Schwann cell covering is lost, and they are naked nerves. Okay, and the Schwann cell covering is lost, and what they form is the last, the intraepithelial plexus. The nerve fibers terminate as naked nerve endings between this tightly packed epithelial cells. That is why damage to this epithelial cells makes the cornea highly sensitive to uh, epithelial damage. That is why you can't touch a cornea without anesthetizing the cornea. Okay, so this is all about the anatomy of the cornea. Okay, we will see in detail about the physiology of the cornea. Okay, thank you. Let me stop my recording.